Hi, I'm Nancy Blotner. At Caldwell University, we believe that all citizens should be informed about the important issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Summit Medical Group, Wells Fargo, the New Jersey Education Association, Caldwell University, Kessler Foundation, changing the lives of people with disabilities. The New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor. Insurance fraud costs New Jersey families $1,300 a year. And by Choose New Jersey. Our mission is attracting companies to the Garden State. Promotional support provided by NJ.com. Small news, big news, true Jersey. And by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. This is the Tisch WNET studio here in Lincoln Center in New York City. It is our pleasure to welcome Evan Siegfried, who is Republican strategist and the author of a compelling new book. It is called GOP GPS, How to Find the Millennials and Urban Voters that the Republican Party needs to survive. How you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
Good. We met each other at a different network, at a different time over at MSNBC, and we were doing a show, and I thought, this guy is innovative. He sees things differently than some other folks in his party or any party. But I kept asking myself, what does he think the Republican Party needs to do to attract younger voters and minority voters in urban areas?
Well, I think the Republican Party hasn't figured out that it has a demographic crisis. At least the leadership hasn't. We have relied on rural voters and baby boomers to sustain us as a party for decades. And now those populations are shrinking because of natural attrition. At the same time, millennials, my generation, which is the largest generation in the United States and the largest sector of the workforce, we are now outnumbering baby boomers, and only 1 in 5 identify with the Republican Party. And that's a historic low. And everybody says, well, they'll just get more conservative and vote Republican as they get older. But that is not happening. We're seeing older millennials still say, I don't want to be a part of this. We don't like what the Republican Party
Why are you?
for. Why am I?
Yeah.
Because I believe in the values of freedom and individual liberty and fiscal conservatism. And when there were certain wings of the party who you could absolutely say are pushing racist policies or racist statements, I don't want to walk away from the party and surrender it to them. If they want it, they're going to have to fight it from me.
Is Donald Trump, President Trump, is he part of the, quote, Republican Party that you just described?
No, he's not. Donald Trump is not healthy for the Republican Party. But this problem really began long before Trump. We were seen as the party of the crusty old white guy who only favored the rich and didn't care about minorities or women. We have this accusation against us that we have a war on women. We don't. If we did, it would certainly be an incompetent war, because look at how we've been able to legislate with both chambers of Congress and with the executive. We can't do anything. But we actually have a really big uphill climb because we only do things that perpetuate these stereotypes. And then when you nominate somebody like Donald Trump, that's taking the stereotype and putting it into the most visual form you can.
Why did the Republican Party allow for, if what you're saying is correct, how and why did the Republican Party then allow for Donald Trump to become their nominee and ultimately our president?
Donald Trump became our nominee because 40% of the Republican Party voted for him. 60% voted against him in the primaries. And unfortunately, when you have 17 other candidates against him, that splits that 60% vote into 2%.
But he beat Hillary Clinton.
He beat Hillary Clinton
and it was
because
more
Hillary
than just
Clinton beat
old,
herself.
crusty white guys. There were other people who voted for him.
But people stayed home because of Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton lost the election by really a total of 77,744 votes. And that's the sum total of the margin of difference in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan. Hillary Clinton lost Wisconsin by about 10,000 votes. She spent $500,000 on a glass ceiling in the Javits Center that was going to be this plastic thing that was going to shatter and fall on the crowd when after she won. For $500,000, you could be running radio ads, get out the vote efforts in Michigan and Wisconsin, and pick up that 10,000 vote margin. It was an incompetent campaign. They didn't listen to people on the ground. You had Debbie Dingell saying, hey, in September of 2016, we're going to lose Michigan. Oh no, our data tells us we're going to win it by double digits. It was hubris.
So let me ask you, Donald Trump is the titular head of the Republican Party. He is, in fact, the head. It's not Paul Ryan. It's not McConnell. It's not Mitch McConnell. It's him. So based on what you're saying, again, if you are right, what is it about the president's policies that you think will attract or could attract millennials and minority voters?
Well, none, to be honest.
But he is the president, and he's going to be the president for several years.
Well, if you look at younger Republicans as well, we aren't exactly big fans of what this president is doing. His approval rating among young Republicans is not great. And then if you also look at what has happened among younger Republicans from December 2015 to March 2017, Republicans 18 to 29, 23% left the party. That coincides with the rise of. They became independents. They didn't want to be a part of this.
So let's fast forward. We don't know what's going to happen. We had John Edward, the psychic, here. I should have asked him what he thought would happen in 2020. But here's my question. If Donald Trump, who I believe will be 74 at the time, opts to do this again, to run for re-election, which is not the same thing, do you actually believe that the Republican Party is capable and or willing to put up a candidate against a sitting Democratic president? Unless I'm mistaken, the last time it happened was in 1980 when Senator Ted Kennedy ran against Jimmy Carter. What was that?
It was 1992.
1992. That's right. He was. My bad.
Pat Buchanan ran as a Republican against George H.W. Bush, and it cost.
In 92 or?
In 92.
So I'm wrong about that.
He took it on in the primary, and that actually bled out George Bush in the primary and caused intra-party fighting.
Thank you for correcting me. By the way, can we edit that out? No. But it's rare.
It is rare.
Could it happen?
It could happen, but the party itself won't. Yeah, I mean, the party itself is controlled by Donald Trump. They're going to be trying to save their own skins, and there are a lot of Republicans in Congress and in the Senate who just want to let Trump essentially take care of himself, and they're not going to go out and campaign with him. They're not going to really help, but they won't say no because they don't want to tick off the base, because the base will throw them out as well. It's a dilemma that they face. You speak up against Trump, you're gone. If you help Trump, it could hurt you in the general election. But
so they changed the tax laws, supposedly better for wealthier Americans. That appeal to millennials?
No.
That appeal to minority voters in cities?
No, it doesn't whatsoever.
Well, then what issues are we talking about that would potentially do that?
We're not. Here's what it's the big problem with the Republican Party and millennials. We're not listening to the issues that impact. We care about debt, student debt in particular. The student debt among all Americans is over $1.2 trillion, which is nearly double the private credit card debt in the United States. The average millennial in 2016 graduated from college with an average of $36,000 in student debt. You know why Bernie Sanders was successful in the 2016 primaries and captured millennials?
He talked about those things?
He talked about those things. His solutions were dead wrong, but he did. No Republican candidate got up there and said, what are your problems and how can I address them? They do the standard, well, we're going to do tax reform. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Millennials actually really like Obamacare. The approval ratings for it have shot up. There are many aspects of it that we enjoy and think are beneficial. We want to see candidates who go out there who campaign on delivering results, and then when they're actually elected, they deliver them. Millennials don't care what party it is that delivers results. They want to see results that are good.
Let me ask you this. I often talk to corporate folks, people who run organizations, as I do some other part of my life, I do some coaching around leadership, and they'll say, you know, you can't, there's a thing with these millennials. They don't want to work as hard. They want immediate gratification. They. By the way, half our staff for millennials on the production side, they're extraordinary producers. No, you're not getting a raise today, but here's my point. I've seen nothing but talented, hardworking millennials, but there's a perception that that's not the case with the vast majority of them. Are they wrong? Who's right?
You're right. Millennials are the hardest working generation in the United States. We are the most entrepreneurial, most fiscally conservative. And the perception that we somehow are lazy, it's wrong. It's just like millennials have a stereotype of the Republican Party. Many adults who are not millennials have a stereotype of millennials that we sit at home in our parents' basement eating Cheetos and playing video games and smoking weed. That's not true. Yes, millennials are actually staying in their parents' homes after college longer than other generations. But why? Student debt. Because when you're getting a job that is only paying $30,000 to $40,000 a year fresh out of college, you can't afford a home on your own, or even with a roommate. So you stay with your parents to save money and pay off that massive student debt. It's an economic ball and chain, and it feeds that perception. And then it's also a little bit of an older generation, as always happens, saying, oh, those young kids, it's not like when I was growing up.
Happening from the beginning of time. I'll tell you what, this is compelling, fascinating. You should be on this conversation. Check out Evan's book. It is called GOP GPS, How to Find the Millennials and Urban Voters the Republican Party Needs to Survive. I want to thank our friend Joy Reid, who's been great here. She brought us together, and I hope to see you again, both here and there. Thanks
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank
Stay
you.
right there. Be right back from the Tisch WNET studio right after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Right from the start, NJ is pleased to welcome Dr. Kendell Sprott, President and CEO of Matheny Medical and Education Center. Doctor, thank you for joining us as part of this ongoing series, Right from the Start, NJ. You'll see the website up throughout this entire segment. Check it out. It is part of an ongoing educational initiative to teach folks, educate and inform and engage folks about the importance, excuse me, of birth to 3. Right away, we're going to show a graphic that talks about brain development during that period of time. Break it down for us. What goes on during that time for infants and toddlers?
So on this slide, it talks about the synapse formation, and those are the connection between the brain cells. When a child is born, the number of brain cells is the same number of cells that they'll have for the rest of their lives. Now, the brain cells will grow, but the connections, which really determine the function and how the brain works, start to develop. And they reach their critical point between 2 and 3 years of age. And after that, the number of synapses you see start to decline. And so it becomes important that during those initial 3 years that those synapses be fully developed, especially as it relates to language and some of the sensory patterns as well as the motor functions.
So, Doctor, as it relates to this initiative, right from the start, NJ, what does that mean in terms of what we as a society need to be doing more of, and what, as parents watching right now, by the way, those prenatal care matters as well, as you can see from that graphic. What do we need to do as a society and then individually?
Well, I think as a society, we need to prioritize the importance of this period of time. And that means to recognize if children are having developmental delays, they get the interventions that they need.
How would we know?
Well, part of it has to do with the developmental screening and assessments that take place. In general, the pediatricians do developmental assessments, or I'll say are supposed to be doing them during the normal visits. And for a newborn, they'd see the baby at a week, 2 months of age, 4 months of age, 6 months of age, 9 months, a year, and then at 18 months and at 2 years. And so those visits are front-loaded. And that means that the pediatrician will ask the parent, because most of the answers that relate to this developmental assessment deal with speech, social adaptive, gross motor function, and fine motor. The gross motor functions are things like rolling over, sitting up, standing. And I think that if you see that a child is having a delay in one of those areas, it increases the likelihood that there's a delay in another area. And it becomes important that if those delays exist, that interventions occur. And there's something called the Early Intervention Program that's designed to assist the parents and the child.
What is that program? Is it some sort of universal program, and how is it implemented and enforced?
So each state has an early intervention program. Most of the dollars flow from the federal government.
The feds give money to New Jersey.
That's correct. And so throughout the state of New Jersey, they have early intervention programs. Usually you'll see it listed by county, the number of early intervention programs. But those programs are designed to provide the kind of therapies that a child might need in the first 3 years of life. So it could be occupational or physical or speech.
What happens if you don't step in at those points?
I think that if you miss that first 3 years, that critical period of time, you may not be able to develop the full potential of the child by having interventions occur later.
Okay, break this down a little bit. By the way, do you want to read more about these issues? You want to see more excerpts from this series right from the start? NJ, go onto the site right now. I know I keep talking about it because broadcasting, television, should be a way to drive people to get more information, and that's what this campaign right from the start NJ is about. So here's the question. When we talk about a societal responsibility, devil's advocate question, people say, you know what, in New Jersey, nationally, there are a lot of priorities. We want to do a lot of things for a lot of people. We don't have the money to do these things in terms of increasing the so-called child care subsidy, providing, frankly, paying more to those who are doing child care, professional work. The parents who are on leave, if you will, from work, the government getting involved, paid family leave, if you will. We don't have the money to do those things, you say?
Well, I think that there is the money to do these things, and a lot can be done if you are creative about how you go about doing it. If indeed our state, our society prioritizes the first 3 years of life, then money can be devoted to it. You know, we spend money for public education. Well, certainly public education could be extended down to birth. We have tax...
But that was not, excuse me, by the courts mandated that in the state of New Jersey in a specific 31 urban, poorer school districts, if you will. Do the courts have to get involved and mandate this for birth to 3?
Well, I think, you know, as you know, there are 3 different branches of government: executive, legislative, and the courts. And what you talked about, it was the courts. But the legislature or the executive branch could make a decision that this is what we're going to do.
Doctor, what would it look like?
Well, what they could do is a number of things. They could basically say, as a state, we want to increase the amount of money that we're going to use to leverage federal dollars that might help address the issue. You could also develop earned income tax credits so that individuals could have a certain write-off for providing for care. They can encourage corporations to devote and give them tax credits to help promote child care.
Corporations, and by the way, in our forum, we had 8 experts talking about this subject, and you said, wait a minute, there was a big federal tax cut from what to what on the corporate end?
From 35% to 21%.
And you said what? What do you do with that, some of that money?
And some of that money could be devoted to help with the child care. You know, in our state, the ability of parents who have children under 1 year of age have extreme difficulty finding child care for their infants. The same thing exists in the 0 to 3. And so maybe a third of the parents that have kids have access to this subsidized child care. Those people that are affluent can afford to pay for it, but even for them, quality child care isn't so easy.
I want to give you a chance, Doctor. You've been with us so many times, and I cannot thank you enough for adding so much to this conversation. At Matheny, what parents are you seeing? What are they saying? And how does it relate to Right from the Start, NJ?
Well, Matheny is a special hospital for the developmentally disabled. And so we take care of the extreme end of the developmentally disabled population. And so we have, in addition to the special hospital where we have 101 beds, we have a private school for the developmentally disabled where we have patients that are in the hospital, that are children that go to our school, as well as about 15 students that live with their parents.
And those parents, do they feel like they're getting enough help for their children, particularly between these ages, if there are developmental issues?
That's a whole nother conversation.
Is it really?
And the answer is that no, they're not getting enough. And again, part of this has to do with how much government puts towards the cost. Again, the funding for developmentally disabled, by and large, comes from Medicaid, and that means that half state and half federal dollars. And so one of the problems that some of the parents find themselves in is that they don't have the ability, if their children are very, very developmentally disabled, to get them into a group home setting. Sometimes that they have to wait until they are adults, and again, by adults we mean 21. And once they get into past 21, they're older, the child is older, if they're difficult to handle, that child can't get put into a waiting list to get into group home until both parents are 55. And so to a certain extent, they feel stuck and they don't see light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to care for their kids without any kind of assistance or a limited amount of assistance.
Doctor, I know that this campaign, this public awareness campaign, Right from the Start, Jay, will continue to explore these and other issues. And while you have been a part of it, so far I know you'll continue to be a part of that conversation. Best to you and your colleagues at Matheny.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
We'll be right back right after this.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
This is Paul Green, the founder of the Paul Green Rock Academy. He is also the founder of the original School of Rock. What were we just looking at?
You were looking at some videos of my kids from Woodstock, New York, where I spent. I'm back in Philly now, but I lived in Woodstock for like 5 years.
Did they ever have any people get together and play music in front of other people back in the day?
They did. They did. They tried to do it in Woodstock, but they lost their license a month before. And the actual Woodstock Festival was about an hour and a half away. So when you live in Woodstock, these like middle-aged tourists, and middle-aged is kind.
Yes.
With fanny packs are like, where was the festival?
Oh,
and
that
we're
is the best.
drive down this road for an hour and a half and make a left, you know. So
is Yasgur's Farm? Never mind. That's another.
Yasgur's Farm.
I'm sorry. I just dated myself. So tell us about. First of all, explain the difference between the original School of Rock and the Paul Green Rock Academy.
Excellent question. I started School of Rock in 1998 as a senior at the University of Pennsylvania. I was on my way to law school.
You're originally from Philly.
Originally from Philly.
Congratulations on the Super Bowl.
Thank you.
We're a little bit past that, but congratulations.
We all worked really hard to make that happen.
You did.
So, and School of Rock was founded in my living room in 1998, under my watch and with a couple partners and a lot of staff.
What was the idea?
Okay, so I'm teaching guitar in my living room. And I love teaching guitar. Most guitar players who teach do it begrudgingly, but I was the opposite. I liked teaching more than I liked loading equipment at 3 a.m.
Right.
So I really liked it. So I actually put my heart and soul in it. And I noticed the most obvious fact, but kids who practiced got good at guitar.
Amazing how that happens.
Kids who didn't practice didn't get good. And more importantly for me, the kids who practiced were more fun to teach. So I started having the kids, to motivate them, do jam sessions on the weekend. And they started getting so much better from just playing with each other that I actually put on a show with them. And then I noticed like the secret to like, imagine being on a baseball team and never playing games. That's what music education was like before School of Rock.
You just practiced.
Just practice. And School of Rock said, okay, November 8th, you're playing a show. And it was the most amazing motivating factor because most of the kids worked really hard, got to that show, got a little of this, which is the most beautiful sound in the world.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need a little recognition.
There you go, yeah. So, and the kids who didn't practice saw the kids who did.
Wow.
And decided not to make that mistake. And from that, my apartment, and you know, until I left the company in 2010, we grew to 57 locations all across the country. They're up to like 140 now.
Wow.
But so I moved to Woodstock. I've been up there for the last. It's funny you mentioned the Woodstock Festival with Michael Lang and Steve Vai and a couple other really great people. We've been working on a music college.
A music college?
Called Woodstock Music Lab, which is my long play.
Right.
And while I was there, I missed teaching kids, so I started the Paul Green Rock Academy. It has a location up in Woodstock, and then, because I'm easily bored.
Yes.
I'm a little punk rock kid from Philly from the 80s. I said, what's the most punk rock thing I can do in my 40s? So I'm back in law school.
Oh, well, and you, by the way, I heard you're back in Philly.
I'm back in Philly. I was accepted to the Temple University Beasley School of Law.
Good for you.
Because I learned along the way, I'm both an entertainer and an entrepreneur. They need better lawyers. I wish I would have known then what I know now as I was building and selling a company.
That's so interesting.
Nothing too regretful, but like when you're doing deals, you're like, here's this thing that I don't want or need.
I hear you.
Oh, by the way, now I want or need it,
So I'm fascinated by your experience as an entrepreneur, your imagination, your vision, your passion for helping kids. I'm also curious about your sense of music appreciation or in public schools. Where is the place, and is it becoming diminished, the commitment to educating kids around music? One question, I know.
It's cyclical. I believe the word is cyclical.
It's close enough.
Yeah.
I don't correct people.
Right now, we're not in a very rock-heavy world. But that was also true in the late 80s and the late 90s.
Yeah.
Then, and then Nirvana changed everything in the 90s. Jane's Addiction before them.
Yeah.
Then the White Stripes and the Strokes brought rock music back in the early 2000s. And you're starting to see it now. So right now, I had this sort of, awakening moment. The first day of law school, my contract professor asked every kid to send in their favorite or most important song in their life. And then he played a 2-second loop of them. 60 kids, 24-year-olds mostly. Only 3 of the songs were rock songs.
That's it.
It was all Beyonce and hip-hop.
Do they know who you are?
You know what? I went in and not telling them, but slowly but surely they figured it out. And
you're the man.
Thank you.
I don't know if they appreciate or understand it, but you are the man. Like you You had a vision and you executed it.
Yes.
You may have regrets about some things you could have done differently if you had a better, whatever. But you did it.
Thank you, Steve. And yeah, so it's so they've kind of figured it out. But law school game, like to most of the kids that I go to school with, I'm crazy Uncle Paul. You know, and like when they're all stressed out, when they're all stressed out about the finals, I said, kids, I've had actual cases, franchise cases argued in front of the Third Circuit Court of Appeals.
That's pressure.
Yeah,
that's pressure.
That would set our entire precedent for
or
our
not being
franchising.
able to make payroll. That's pressure. Not that we understand that in public broadcasting every 2 weeks. We get it. Listen, Paul Green, the founder of the Paul Green Rock Academy, the founder of the original School of Rock.
Yeah.
You are making a difference to a lot of people every day, particularly young kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great job.
You too.
Made my job easy. Thanks.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Summit Medical Group, Wells Fargo, the New Jersey Education Association, Caldwell University, Kessler Foundation, the New Jersey Office of the Insurance Fraud Prosecutor, and by Choose New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.